This video is sponsored by OM System, and I'm really happy about that because, as you have seen, this is my favorite system to do macro photography. I really think that both the lenses and the cameras from OM System and Olympus are the best ones you can use if you're doing macro photography, and especially if you're doing high magnification insect macro photography outdoors in the wild, as I do. And in this video I'm gonna go through all the different lenses that are available, the camera that I use, why it is so good according to me, and also the teleconverters that are available from OM System, as well as the flashes. I'm gonna go through each item and tell you what I think of it, who it is for, which one you should buy, and so on. So, let's get into it. If you have been following this channel for a while, you know that I began my macro photography career with Sony cameras, and while I still own them and use them, I don't use them that often for macro photography. What you have seen if you have followed my channel is that I almost exclusively use the OM System cameras and lenses for macro photography, and the reason for that is mostly because it has a superior focus stacking feature, and I actually don't think any other system available right now is on the same level, because this camera and most newer Olympus and OM cameras can focus stack automatically, meaning that you just put the focus on one point in the frame, like closest to you. You press the shutter and it will take a very quick series of shots at different focusing points. It can stack up to 15 photos internally in the camera, so you don't even have to do anything yourself. What most professional and very serious macro photographers do, however, is that they stack the pictures in the computer afterwards. But it is really invaluable to have the camera take the photos. If you don't have access to this kind of feature, you have to do the stack manually yourself by trying to move the camera very small fractions of a millimeter while taking photos and trying to hold it steady and move it like very directly towards the insect, and this is extremely hard. So it's such a relief to have the camera do all that work for you. And this is the main reason I got into the OM system. So I bought this camera, the OM1, mostly for the focus bracketing features. But what I discovered was that it is really good in a lot of other senses as well. For example, you have really superior image stabilization, both in macro photography and in regular photography. I have not seen any other system that does image stabilization as well as Olympus and OM System. And especially at macro focusing distances, like 1x magnification and 2x magnification, it really does a good job with the stabilization there as well. On top of that, you have access to lenses like this one, the 90mm, which has a full frame equivalent of 4x magnification and a full frame equivalent of 180mm focal length, which is very nice to have in a macro lens because you get good working distance. And also, I think that the ergonomics, the grip and the feel when holding the OM1 and the other Olympus cameras is really good. For me at least, it fits perfectly. It's very convenient even with a pretty long lens like this one. And also I think that the price per performance with this camera is really excellent. I mean, this is a flagship camera and it really feels like a flagship camera. For example, it has almost 6 megapixel EVF, which is more than, for example, some of the Sony cameras that cost a lot more money. And this camera comes in at around slightly above $2,000 or euros. And that's a lot of value for your money. That's really a lot of value for money. I have on this camera my favorite lens, the M.Zuiko 90mm macro lens. And if you have a lot of money to spend and you want to spend a lot of money to get the best gear possible for macro photography, I think this is the lens you should get. The 2x magnification that this lens has is really nice especially if you're photographing very small insects like I do. I mean, here in Sweden, they don't get very big. So it really comes in handy to have that extreme magnification. Also, it has this clutch here, which is very useful. So you can get into like manual focusing mode if you want to. Sometimes that is a really nice thing to have. And even though it is electronically coupled, with this ring it really feels like true manual focusing. And you can just do like this to get back to autofocus. This is a 90mm lens, which means that it is a full frame equivalent of 180mm. So if you're trying to shoot skittish insects like butterflies or damselflies, dragonflies, then I think this is the best lens you can get, because then you can shoot them at quite some distance and still get up very close, so you don't scare them away. So if you're into that kind of macro photography, this lens is really good. So in summary, the 90mm, you should get it if you want the best possible lens for macro photography that money can buy. And if you're not scared of a lens that is a bit long and not as lightweight as some of the other lenses, then this is the lens to get. Okay, now let's move on to the 60mm M.Zuiko lens. As you can see, it is a lot smaller than the 90mm. There is a big difference here. So if your main priority is to have a small and lightweight setup for macro photography, then maybe this is the lens to get. Also, this lens is a lot cheaper. I think it's less than half the price of the 90mm. So if you're buying your first lens for the OM system and you want to get into macro photography, then this might be a more sensible option. And then if you feel like you really love macro photography and want to get more serious, then perhaps you should upgrade to this lens. But there are still a lot of pro users swearing by this lens, and probably because it is so small and lightweight. It really makes the shooting experience very nice. You don't have the clutch on this lens as you have on the 90mm, but you have like a focusing scale here, so you can see where you're at. And of course, this also has excellent image quality. I would say that on these two lenses, like there is no real difference in image quality. Both are perfect, I would say, optically. Both are razor sharp, beautiful colors, no optical problems at all. So that shouldn't be a consideration. You should care more about the price, the size, your need for maximum magnification and working distance and so on. So the 60mm is a full frame equivalent of 120mm. You have pretty good working distance, but a bit less, of course, than on this one. In macro photography, working distance is proportional to the focal length. So a shorter focal length, it means slightly shorter working distance. So this is a really solid all-round macro lens. And you could also attach a Raynox DCR 250 filter, a magnification filter, to this lens to get closer to 2x magnification. With a Raynox filter, I measured the maximum magnification to 1.65 times. So that's pretty good. Then you of course have to remove the filter if you want to focus to infinity. So it is a bit more finicky than just using the 90mm lens. Then we have the smallest and cheapest of the three macro lenses by OM system, and this is the 30mm. As you can see, it is even smaller than the already very small 60mm, and yeah, it's just super tiny. The strength of this lens is that it is very, very cheap, very good value for money. I mean, this one is very good value for money, but this one is even better value for money because it is still as sharp, I would say, as a 60mm. It produces very beautiful photos. It actually has slightly better magnification as well than the 60mm. This one goes to 1.25 times magnification. So you get a little bit closer with this lens. However, you cannot really attach a Raynox DCR 250 to get closer because the focal length is too short. I tried that and you don't get that much closer. Also, the working distance is not as long as on the 60mm. So with the 30mm, you have to be physically very close to whatever you're photographing. Still, it is a very fun lens, produces beautiful photos, extremely good value for money. So if you have an OM1 camera or another camera from Olympus and you're thinking about getting into macro photography and maybe trying it, then this might be a really good first lens to buy to not spend too much money but still explore macro photography and be able to take beautiful photos. So this could be a good first purchase if you're looking to try macro photography for the first time. Now let's talk about teleconverters. They are so much fun and they can bring you very, very, very close to your subjects. And I think actually that the 90mm is the only lens that officially supports the use of teleconverters. The teleconverters unfortunately do not work with the 60mm macro lens or the 30mm macro lens. The simple reason for that is that the teleconverter is quite long. It needs to protrude into the lens, and the 90mm lens has some space to accommodate the teleconverter, while the 60mm and the 30mm do not have that space in the back, and the teleconverter will simply not fit. You have two options here. A teleconverter basically will make your focal length longer. So you have the 2x teleconverter here. You simply put this one between the lens and your camera, or you can use the 1.4x teleconverter, which is a bit thinner. And the 2x teleconverter will make your 90mm lens into a 180mm lens. And the 1.4 teleconverter will increase the focal length by 1.4x, 40%, whatever that becomes, like 130, something like that. What you pay though is that your max aperture will be smaller. I mean, the max aperture of the 90mm lens is f3.5. You will not be able to shoot at f3.5 if you're using a teleconverter, more like f10 or something like that. At least with the 2x teleconverter, I think f10 was the maximum aperture you could use. I think where a teleconverter really shines is if you need to take photos at insane magnification, or if you want to shoot things like butterflies that can be hard to get close to because they are skittish, then it's really nice to be able to increase your focal length a lot. Of course, you can also use this with the wildlife lenses, for example the 300mm lens that I own. It's great to have a teleconverter with that one. Instantly it becomes a 600mm lens, which can be a lot of fun. Now let's talk about flashes. OM System has a few different flashes that they offer. Earlier I reviewed the FL700WR. I wasn't super impressed. I mean, it's a good flash, but it's not great when you're taking super fast series of focus stacking. So I asked Olympus to send me a better flash for fast focus stacking, a flash with extreme performance when you're doing fast stacking. And they sent me this flash, the FL900R. It's a chunky beast, but it is actually really, really powerful. And if you want to do super fast focus stacking with good performance, I think this is the flash you should get. Let me just show you quickly. So have a look at this. The camera is not that good at capturing it, but yeah, it has, and these batteries aren't even fully charged. It has really solid focus stacking performance. So if you want a flash to do macro photography focus stacking, I think this is the best option you have from OM System. So in summary, I am really in love with the OM System for macro photography. And of course, I'm not only saying this because it is a sponsored video by them. You have seen me almost exclusively use their equipment for macro photography during the last couple of years. So yeah, it really comes from my heart, my recommendation to try their cameras and their lenses for macro photography. And lastly, I just want to tell you about a great resource for macro photography. OM System has an email series. They have a downloadable guide for macro photography with some of the best tips and tricks to get started and to get the best possible results. And a series of emails to teach you indispensable tips for macro photography. Go sign up to their email series in the link in the description. And thank you so much OM System for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching. See you soon again.